Yes,
or for the field rather.
I told a story from yesterday where I had played against Stefan Mott, who's using the same team that Ethan is using right here, about how little damage I did to that Ting Lu behind light screen with my Specs Terapagos. And we'll see if Ethan can kind of replicate some of that magic as he leads the Grimmsnarl to get screens up next to Zamazenta versus the Iron Hands and Miraidon immediately threatening with Cork Drive Pokemon from Adrian's side.
Yeah, so another quick shout out that I don't know how I glanced over this. This Cresselia is Calm Mind.
Yes.
With Lunar Blessing, Moonblast, and Trick Room. So
Yes.
This team is just heavy on the defense. So Adrien might need some crits to get through Ethan's defenses.
Yeah, well, this is just the test of how broken is Miraidon. How many KOs can you pick up through light screen on Ethan's side, and especially with the Ting Lu likely in the back, as Grimmsnarl is just going to switch out immediately.
Absolutely. So probably going to see the immediate Terra Electric that we normally do from this Miraidon, and probably maybe a fake out from that Iron Hands, but also could easily throw out the option of just an attack or a Volt Switch pivot to maybe get Miraidon back on the field after its own Volt Switch.
Yeah, we are going to see the Miraidon locking into that Terastallization, becomes just a pure electric type, fake out going into that Grimmsnarl slot, now the Ting Lu, and an Electro Drift into the ground type switch in. Great move from Ethan as the Body Press does so much damage to Miraidon.
Yeah. So we got Ting Lu on the field, so first of all, reduce damage from that Miraidon big time. Next, Electric doesn't affect ground. I mean, so no damage coming out as Zamazenta was able to get a free body press off, and now Miraidon locked onto the field here, going for another Electro Drift into that Zamazenta, knowing that you can't target down my Ting Lu, your choice, Specs, buddy. And a Sand Tomb gonna lock that, nope, gonna lock that Miraidon off the field for the rest of the match entirely.
Sand Tomb right back to the Pokeball for that Miraidon, and that is the least I've seen any Miraidon do, period.
Yeah, and I mean, that feels like a throwback. I just saw an Iron Hands Drain Punch of Ting Lu, and I'm like, oh, 2023 was such a great year.
I'm getting more flashbacks to Regulation C.
Oh, wow, Chiyu's here too!
This is just New Balance.
It's New Balance, my sneakers. No sponsors. But Zamazenta sitting on this field, very, very comfy. Ethan's still having access to Terastallization in front of a Chiyu, and a Water-type Terastallization at that is definitely going to come in handy for him to be able to handle the offense that Adrien still does have on the field, despite losing Miraidon.
Yeah, and of course, Ethan is going to have the slower Pokemon on the field. The Zamazenta, is that a double protect?
I think that was a double protect.
Wow.
Unless I'm counting wrong. No, that was a double protect. The Sand Tomb protect came out last turn as Dark Pulse goes into the slot, expecting a Terastallization, and a Fisher comes out from Ting Lu, is gonna miss as 70% of the time it does, even if it doesn't feel like it. A Wild Charge going into that protected puppy.
And a great, the double protect, 1 out of 3 shot that it works, but even if the double protect didn't go off, the fact that Ethan did not Terastallize that turn ends up being a massive boon for him, because Adrien really keyed in on that Terastallization. If Ethan had gone to a water type, is hit by a neutral Dark Pulse plus a super effective Cork Drive attack boosted in terrain Wild Charge. Just so many multipliers that even with the +1 defense on a naturally very bulky Pokemon like the Zamazenta, not going to do, or going to do a ton of damage. But Body Press right back out to this GU, cannot Terastallize away from that fighting weakness. Adrian's going to be down to his final 2 Pokemon, and we still haven't even seen this Fissure come out, and it will hit!
And that Iron Hands is donezo. I think it was a really risky play for Ethan on the prior turn to go for that protect with Zamazenta, a double protect, especially in the face of Chiyu. But ultimately, by getting that, locking him to winning the game by being able to say, okay, do I need to Terastallize or not? Had that 33% chance not happened, I mean, it would have resulted in the same thing. But knowing, okay, I don't need to Terastallize, I'm going to survive here, it's locked in. I mean, if it wants to switch out to Ursaluna, go for it. I'm going to try to crush you. But Adrien taking some hyper offense and running into the brick wall that was Ethan's team right now, gonna have to see how Adrien wants to adjust here. I mean,
I think really just from that turn 1, that Ting Lu switch in for the Grimmsnarl was such a huge momentum play that it was really difficult just for Adrien to find any ground to move after that, because the next turn of clicking your Sand Tomb plus Protect on Zamazenta, you know that Miraidon is stuck on the field, and if Miraidon switches out before the Sand Tomb, whatever's coming in is getting stuck right in front of that Zamazenta too.
Yeah, I think the tough thing is leading a Miraidon into a team with a Ting Lu. If Ting Lu doesn't lead, you need to call the slot perfectly to get your Volt Switcher, to get your Electro Drift off and do the damage you want. Even if Ting Lu comes into the field and you get the slot right and don't Volt Switch, let's say, you're not doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, in theory.
Comparable to what you should be.
Yeah.
You're still doing a ton. But Adrian's going to need to find some room to break through. I can only keep saying it so many times, this defense.
Oh, absolutely. And the important thing is that for the defensive team on Ethan's side,
we need Thesaurus.
We didn't even get to see the 4th Pokemon.
Yeah.
Well, I would have loved to see, that Calm Mind Cresselia come in. That's a Pokemon that, as much as it loves to be a partner for the regular Ursaluna, the Hisuian form of Ursaluna, can be kind of difficult for the Ursaluna to break through because it's not able to click its ground moves, its spread earthquakes and things of that nature. On the other hand, it could have just been the Choice Scarf Urshifu waiting in the back to clean up, whatever is left over, because that also outspeeds all of Adrian's team outside of this Chi-Yu unless Tailwind is up.
Yeah. So Adrien going with the same lead, probably just going to play a bit differently as Grimmsnarl and Zamazenta. The same leads on the same sides as last time. Very curious to see what the trainers do to make their adjustments. As I was saying, the Miraidon has to call the slot correctly, and I think it definitely has to go for a Volt Switch this time. Being stuck on the field as a Miraidon is nothing you want. And maybe having a hard switch if you don't get that turn right. So Ethan definitely more seemingly in the driver's seat, given that he just won game 1, has more wiggle room to say, okay, Adrien, you need to call exactly what I'm going to do, and you need to respect my options, where Adrian's options are not as clear. There's going to be a fake out or maybe a drain punch if he wants to call that, and Miraidon can go for a Volt Switch. It just needs to call the right slot, and we're going to see right here there are no switches, so Miraidon, if it Volt Switches, is going to be able to get off the field. If it goes for an Electro Drift, possibly going to be able to pick up a KO here.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Ethan in the driver's seat after that first game is going to make a slight adjustment, protecting Zamazenta on this turn. The fake out still goes into the Grimmsnarl slot, and Adrien Hurley, if I know the kind of player Adrien is, okay, I was going to say, if I know the kind of player Adrien is, I think he just makes the same exact play on game 2, because he knows that you're going to overthink it. This is a player who loves playing that 2-2-2 Dondozo, that style of team. He loves those kinds of mind games.
Yeah, I don't usually like using the term. I think it's a silly term, but Adrian's a very cerebral player.
Yes.
He plays a mental game like no other, where he wants to identify exactly what you're going to do, and I feel like thinks about less what he's going to do and more what you're going to do every single time I play against him. So even there, I mean, let's talk about that fake out damage, by the way. That did like a quarter of a Grimmsnarl's HP.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Just the amount of damage that Adrian's entire team has. And Electro Drift still going out, now with Light Screen up to protect the Zamazenta, and still going to do a ton of damage. But, of course, not being enough to pick up the one-hit KO. Fires back with the body press, but the Drain Punch will wrap it up for Zamazenta on Ethan's side.
All right, so this time we have a trade in which Restricted goes off the field for which, and it is the Miraidon coming out on top for its troubles. A Light Screen is up on the opposing side, and a Choice Scarf, I believe Urshifu, is now on the field. And with that, Terra Grass going to be able to resist these electric hits that these electric types want to go for. So Adrien probably going to have to maneuver his Miraidon off the field, if not just throw out some big attacks. I mean, again, there is the Choice Scarf there, so it's very, very threatening into this slot. And we do see the Terrestrialization from Urshifu here, protecting it from taking too much damage from an electric type move.
Yeah, the issue for Adrien is that if he does have just the same 2 Pokemon in the back as game 1, the Chi-Yu and the Ursaluna, neither of those Pokemon want to switch into a Surging Strikes for the Miraidon, so Adrien kind of stuck with the Miraidon on the field, slower than this Choice Scarf Urshifu, and will just take the KO. Now evening up the Pokemon count 3-3. Reflect now on Ethan's side, and we'll see how much damage this Iron Hands does. Of course, it still does have the Quark Drive attack boost, and it will Wild Charge into this newly Terra Grass Urshifu. That's still respectable damage for a resistant hit.
Absolutely. With Quark Drive and the Electric Terrain boosting that up by 1/3 and 1/3, that's still some good damage as Chi-Yu hits the field with Scarf. We're going to have to see a speed interaction here right now. Depending on the natures of these Pokemon and the investments, the Chi-Yu could be outsped by the Urshifu, both holding the Choice Scarf, but Chi-Yu probably free to just throw out a Heat Wave and say, hey, I don't really, whatever.
Yeah,
I would assume the Chi-Yu's faster.
You would assume the Chi-Yu is faster. It's naturally a higher base speed. So Ethan, likely knowing this, likely knowing how his Urshifu is trained, switches out to the Ting-Lu. The tricky part, though, is that Iron Hand still has a super effective attack that it can launch into that Ting-Lu spot, even as Ting-Lu eats up that overheat like it's nothing.
That is comically low damage for a Chi-Yu. And Spirit Break, not a 2-hit KO, but more critically lowering that special attack to -3. As Iron Hands does go for the Drain Punch pin onto Ting-Lu, is through that Reflect, still doing less than I thought with the boost from the Electric Terrain and Quark Drive, but looking like it's going to be not a 2-hit KO if I remember how much the Overheat did, and this Chi-Yu needs to get itself off the field.
Yeah, this Chi-Yu now at -3 stages of special attack. I don't believe another Drain Punch is going to be enough to pick up Ting-Lu from this range. The important thing that we did see, though, in Game 1 and now here in Game 2 are both the Grimmsnarl and the Ting-Lu on Ethan's end. Both of them are faster than this Iron Hand. Sorry, you just saw the Ursaluna switch on the field. Both of them are faster than the Iron Hands on Adrian's side. So, 30% of the time, if this is a fissure coming out, it's not. It's going to be a Ruination.
Yeah. So Ethan making a great switch here. Bringing back in the Urshifu to threaten a potential switch from the Chi-Yu, you know, not taking the bait there.
Oh, yeah. Still, the Chi-Yu, when it comes back into this game, still going to be extremely threatening, and now Ethan also has to deal with a Guts-boosted Ursaluna that I don't know if he has a great way to knock out without putting his other Pokemon at risk of his Iron Hands.
Yeah. I'm trying to think through the position here, who's kind of at an advantage. You know, Ting-Lu's really low, but Adrien has very, very slow Pokemon that are susceptible to this Urshifu's attacks. You know, I don't think there's going to be any kind of a KO here going into the Iron Hands, but definitely more threatening onto your Ursaluna here, as that's not a one-hit KO with the close combat, and that is the stronger of the two options here.
Yes.
Over Surging Strikes, just a little bit more damage. Ting-Lu's Fissure going to come out and miss the Iron Hands, as the Iron Hands is going to throw out a Drain Punch into the Ting-Lu, and Chi-Yu's already looking a lot more free to throw out a Heat Wave and win this game.
Yeah, the important kind of damage rolls that you see there, the close combat, we now have that confirmation, does not knock out the Ursaluna on Adrian's side from full. It may have been a damage roll, but if it is, it looks like it's, if anything, in Adrian's favor, as now he just returns, picks up both KOs, and Grimmsnarl, not a Pokemon known for its offensive output. Don't know if it'll have enough to clean up this endgame.
I would say a Pokemon that actually could be known for its offensive output, but not as much its offensive investment.
There it is, okay.
So I'll agree with you and disagree with you there, but I've seen some Grimmsnarls do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of damage there, as Ursaluna crucially fainting to its own burn damage, as Chi-Yu does come out here, probably going to throw out an Overheat, and Iron Hand's probably going to be able to do a good chunk of damage as long as Adrien hits his moves.
See, that's the important thing, is that Chi-Yu's only attacks that are not...
And the damage roll,
wow,
doing some 48% to 52% there as Wild Charge comes out. And it is going to be a 2-hit KO on Grimmsnarl, but is Spirit Break going to be able to KO Iron Hands here? As you said, Grimmsnarl not known for its offensive output, and I mean, Iron Hands known for its big bulk, but this is a super effective hit. Had that Overheat hit, this game would be so much different. The Spirit Break didn't come in. Iron Hands took... Huh? Huh?
Not much damage at
There
all.
were no intimidates on the field, were there?
No.
Wild Charge picks up the KO there. I take it back. Grimmsnarl not known for its offensive output. Grimmsnarl not known for its offensive output.
It can do 50% of Chiyu's health, but Chiyu's also a Pokemon with base, I believe, 55, maybe 60 defense.
80. 55 HP.
55 HP. Either way, not a very bulky Pokemon on the physical end of things is that Chiyu, and likely
90% miss. Somewhere in the damage
that
formula rolls.
And if we would have seen a critical hit from that Spirit Break onto the Iron Hands, looks like that would have been enough to do it.
I'm looking at it, I'm like, are there intimidates that game?
No.
Was Reflective on that side of the field? No, that would be the other side.
No, it's actually Court Change on the Ursaluna.
Oh.
Yeah, it's an egg move. I don't know if you would have seen it.
No, you're so right. I mean, it looked like that Quark Drive was boosting defense at that point.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I know it wasn't.
And
but you could have tricked
terrain
me.
was off the field anyway.
Oh my gosh.
The Iron Hands is just built like that. That's the thing.
Quite literally was built like that.
Quite literally, this Iron Hands, I think we all forgot. I know I for sure did. When we rolled over to Regulation G, we saw all of the new special attacking Pokemon. All of a sudden, Iron Hands was just kind of left behind, forgotten for a bit. I completely forgot that he was that guy. He just is. And we've seen that here. That's really the only way that Ethan's team can break through Iron Hands even somewhat consistently.
I would have said the Grimmsnarl, and I'm wrong about that.
I was saying 30% of the time you hit those fissures, and that might be your best bet outside of just boosting Zamazenta. The tricky part on boosting Zamazenta is there is still a Miraidon on the other end of the field that even with Light Screen did about 90% of your HP.
Yeah, the other option would be to Terra Poison that Tinglu, but I'm not sure if that's what you want to invest your resources in this kind of game. You know, I don't remember what we saw the Terra on Urshifu. Which worked out a bit. I think maybe had that been Tinglu, we would have been in a different position. And maybe if it were, well, it definitely couldn't have been Zamazenta. But just showing, you know, which restricted came out on top was the restricted that stayed on top.
I was going to say the restricted that didn't faint first.
Yeah. So we are going to see the same exact lead from Adrien. As I said, a very cerebral player, knowing what he has to do is keep throwing what he knows against the wall and hoping it sticks. And I mean, not hoping it sticks, but making it stick. How's that?
Making it stick. We see an immediate adaptation here, the Incineroar on lead for Ethan's end. And from what we just saw, the glimpse of the Pokemon that he has in the back, no Urshifu coming out in this game.
Yep.
It could be a very good adaptation. You know, you don't really want to commit the terrestrialization to becoming a grass type because of the Chi-Yu. So you bring out an Incineroar that provides your Intimidate to help slow down those Iron Hands, at least just a little bit. You have your own Fake Out Pressure to help you get up your Light Screen and your Reflect throughout this game. Could be a very, very strong bring as another Pokemon that slows down the physical attackers and can still do work, especially against this Chi-Yu. An immediate hard switch, though, into this Ursaluna for Adrien.
Yeah, so definitely a very, very good bring by Ethan, deciding to bring in Incineroar, being able to get that fake out support, get that Intimidate out onto Iron Hands, which has been giving him trouble. But one of the other things to note is that, you know, Urshifu may not have done all that much in the last game, especially considering it has Chi-Yu with its own Choice Scarf to contest against. So maybe saying, all right, I have a Scarf, you have a Scarf, your Scarf outspeeds mine, what am I really doing here? We see some really interesting plays from these two players on turn one. Let's break it down for me.
Yeah, so of course, Ethan, knowing Adrien, knowing the plays that he had made the first two games, was very aggressive with that Miraidon, trying to pick up KOs immediately, committing the terrestrialization, makes a hard call, committing terrestrialization of his own to the Grimmsnarl so it can't be faked out. He clicks Fake Out plus Spirit Break, trying to just completely neutralize this Miraidon immediately. Adrien, though, like you've said all series long, an extremely cerebral player, thinks everything through, knows, oh, Ethan, because I've conditioned him to make this play, to think that my Miraidon is going to stay in here, I can get a free switch in, activate my Ursaluna right away, get the Volt Switch back out. I don't need to worry about Fake Out. If Ethan commits Terastallization immediately, great. If he doesn't, I don't lose any momentum because I still get Miraidon out where it can't be faked out and is still threatening knockouts on both of these Pokemon.
Yeah, and that Volt Switch, I mean, Iron Hands doesn't have a very high special attack stat, but doing considerable damage to that Incineroar definitely going to come in handy. As Ting Lu comes out, again, Miraidon's mortal enemy, but I wouldn't be shocked just to see another Volt Switch come out right into that Incineroar.
Yeah, and again, like you had mentioned, Miraidon, if you're on the field and Ting Lu's in the back, you do have to call the right slot here. I think Ethan is kind of playing the game that Adrien knows. The more important slot in that position is the Grimmsnarl, and Adrien does take the bait just flicking Electro Drift into that slot. Parting Shot now going into Ursaluna, and I would think we're going to see the Grimmsnarl just come right back out here.
Yeah, I think Ethan making the correct switch there, knowing, okay, you're trying to lock down my Incineroar with this Ursaluna. I'm just going to bring my Ting Lu in the switch that's probably going to take the electric move with my faster Pokemon, get the pivot off into the Ursaluna, and Ursaluna's Facade.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I'm surprised that wasn't a headlong rush.
I would have thought it'd be a headlong rush into that Incineroar and would let you catch something like the Zamazenta if it wanted to switch into that slot. But Ethan masterfully maneuvering that turn 2 after seemingly falling behind pretty far after turn 1, but ends up switching around such that Grimmsnarl has just swapped sides of the field, and he takes 0 damage, just completely immune to both of the attacks that Adrien threw off that.
Yeah, Ally Switch definitely got a lot less usage now, or a lot less distribution, but I think Ethan just mastered how to use it somehow. And I think Adrien, that Facade was going for the Ting Lu switch in, and the Electro Drift was for the Grimmsnarl staying in. But Ethan calling it correctly, maybe knowing how Adrien plays, or maybe identifying everything as a critical hit comes out there through the light screen, I believe.
No, it was Reflect that was set up. That's why I was holding my breath.
Okay.
Because unfortunately we did see the Sand Tomb comes out. Unfortunately, we did see the critical hit. I was very curious. This is likely a calc that Ethan knows. Does his Grimmsnarl survive an Electro Drift without Light Screen, but with Ting Lu on the field? I didn't think so.
No.
I was pretty certain that even without
Ting Lu was on the field, but no, because I'm pretty sure sometimes a Mungus can drop to that without a Ting Lu on the field, and that's a fully resisted hit.
Exactly.
So the multiplier is working out that way. That thing was gone. I thought it was going through Light Screen. I wasn't paying enough attention.
No, he got Reflect up on that turn, and I think was just calling that the Miraidon would switch out and not attack the Grimmsnarl so he could get a Light Screen up later. So we do have no Light Screen for this entire game. The Miraidon, though, is stuck on the field, and so going to take some damage from the Fake Out, from the Sand Tomb on this coming turn. But still, without Light Screen, this is just another pretty free Electro Drift that's going to come off into this Incineroar slot.
And it's going to KO.
It's likely going to KO.
No, I know it is going to KO. I know Miraidon calcs pretty well. Volt Switch KOs. Electro Drift with Vessel of Ruin with some chip, that's the KO. So Incineroar gonna have to pay the price of stepping foot into Miraidon's domain. Ting Lu, unfortunately, with Sand Tomb not able to quickly get rid of that Miraidon. Had that been a Stomping Tantrum or something, maybe we would have seen a bit of a different story, but that Incineroar is, told you so, off the field.
Yeah, that poor Incineroar going back down. And this is where we see another fissure hit, though, for Ethan.
Sorry, I had my water bottle up to my lips. You may have heard that.
Okay, now gets right back into this game. And just like we had mentioned, sometimes that is what you have to rely on as a Ting Lu player. The unfortunate part is that it's still going to be a couple more turns before Miraidon is going to feint to the Sand Tomb recoil.
Yeah, the big thing here is that Hadron Engine's off the field. So not threatening nearly as easily a KO on Zamazenta. Not to mention Ting Lu is on the field, reducing that damage. And Zamazenta still has the option to protect, right?
Yes.
And another Sand Tomb from Ethan will be able to take out the Miraidon just on damage alone. If it hits, 85%, I believe.
85% of the time.
So it's going to be really, really interesting to see. I think the Ursaluna is pretty healthy, and we haven't seen Adrien's Force Pokemon. So we're going to see what... it's
Is that Scarf Chi-Yu.
So Chi-Yu, probably the Pokemon that can get the job done. Ethan has already used his Terra very, very early on Grimmsnarl, and I think Ethan's probably kicking himself right now, regretting that Terastallization so early. You know, had he had that right now for
the Zamazenta,
he would be in much better position. You know, I think using your Terra to get out of potential fake-out situations isn't always the best. It should be used as a last resort, not an opener on Game 3 situation. So I think if I had to pick where Ethan misstepped, it was that turn 1 Terra. Not necessarily the moves he clicked or anything that he did, but that Terastallization I really think is going to come back to haunt him. And after that Snarl, that Miraidon looking like it probably will hang on just by a teeny little thread. And we are going to see right now, yep, it is just going to be able to stay around for one more Sand Tomb. I think that needed to be a Sand Tomb again into the Miraidon's lot, but wanting to reduce that Chi-Yu's damage so it can't do as much into Zamazenta.
You know, if you're playing the odds, you've got a 1 in 3 chance to hit a double protect. You have a 10% chance for that overheat from Chi-Yu to miss. You know, there are all kinds of odds you can go for from Ethan's end. Does not get the double protect. He's already had the 1 fissure. He has had 2 fissures hit on this set. Chi-Yu overheat, not enough to KO. And
thanks to that -1, yeah.
You have the Electro Drift going to come out into this slot too. You would think even without Hadron Engine, even at -1 and Tinglu on the field, and it is going to go down.
Okay, I was gesturing to Jacob that I don't think this was going to KO, but
really?
It did, yeah.
I think with Beads of Ruin, that kind of puts it over the edge.
I forgot about Beads of Ruin. I was too focused on the moose with the Vessel of Ruin. Chi-Yu offset it. Absolutely would have been enough. This is why we need to pay attention to Pokemon. There's so many things going on at once. Pokemon's such an incredible game.
It's chess with fun little guys and a million other things you have to keep track of.
Yeah, and this Ursaluna, naturally faster than the Tinglu. Unsure how that's going to go because of natures, because of how these Pokemon were naturally existent. So we're going to see some last-ditch fissures come out from Ethan, it seems. Maybe a Sand Tomb would be better here. Probably not, because you don't have Protect. That's the interesting thing. You don't have Protect, so Sand Tomb is very, very hard to use here. Overheat, gonna miss Tinglu.
It's at -3. I don't know if it matters
Fissure
too much.
coming out into the Ursaluna as we do see the speed interaction now, as a Facade is going to come out onto the Tinglu, do just over half.
Wow.
I'm surprised that did so little.
Yes, that's the power of Reflect and the power of Tinglu's natural physical bulk.
We are going to see 1, maybe 2 more chances for Fissure to hit here, as Adrien also needs to be hitting some overheats right now.
Yep, I think this may be the last chance for Ethan. We'll see, he's hit 2 already this set, and that's going to be a miss.
So, another Facade gonna come out here. Might not be enough to KO. It is, actually.
Yes, and Adrien Hurley, after getting turn 1 so right in this Game 3, comes down to the thinnest of margins, has to claw his way through. And the thing with Fissure, it's a 30% chance. If you have 2 chances to hit it, it becomes a 51% chance for one of those 2 fissures to hit. Odds are in Ethan's favor in that end game, which is mind-boggling after the hole that he got dug into after turn 1.
Absolutely. I mean, credit to both players for recognizing how they needed to play that. That was a bit of a crazy one. Again, I think if Ethan had preserved his Terra, we would have been looking at a much, much different game. You know, that overheat did an abundance of damage. I mean, the Terra Electro Drift also would have done a lot after the Terra Water, so maybe not that Terra.
Well, if you still have Terastallization available for your Zamazenta, then it frees you up, and instead of having to click Snarl on that turn, you can go for the extra Sand Tomb, get that KO on the on the Miraidon, free up Zamazenta. You know, there are different plays that you can make. You have different outs.
That's where it was. It was right before Miraidon went down. The Snarl came out instead of the Sand Tomb, which that animation is just so funny. Seeing a giant lizard just go, oh no.
Take a little spin on the teacups.
Yeah, I was going to say the teacups.
But I think that is just even more credit than to Adrien for how he played games 1 and 2. The kind of player sticks to his game plans until he doesn't need to. Conditioned Ethan into protecting against the fake out into Grimmsnarl plus Electro Drift into one of those 2 slots, and then changes it up in game 3 just when you think you've got this player figured out. Now he's going to make the adjustment. Now he's going to put you on the back foot and gets his way into top 4 here today.
Absolutely, and with that, top 4 is next. Take care, guys.